Alright, so exposed CPS and pedo hunt. Okay? There's a real ideological reasoning for that. Those tend to be linked a little bit. The the pedo hunt is basically where pedophiles are psychotic on dark web, and most people in the hacker world are fucking sick of it. But the exposed CPS is basically started out as pissed off parents that had stupid pedophiles in the CPS that were using hacker computers to be voyeuring them at home. That is what the start of that was. But essentially, what's come of that is somewhat of a repurposing, where essentially a centralized sick fuck list is being created essentially for what would represent this type of adoption kind of world. And that the reason for that is here and here I'm watching this. This is what made me think of this stuff. I'm watching this. Rehoming, 60 minutes. So essentially they were parading children around in a church. And that the reality is that there's not very much oversight, and that would be those websites, all that stuff would be the exact place the pedophiles would look to acquire a child in their house. And so that's that type of stuff is it's people that are doing that stuff. They're rehoming shit. Just remember that none of them are actually looking into whether that person's a child predator. And so the reality is that more than likely every single person is a potential pedophile is how I would approach that rehoming kind of shit. Not all of them, but the whole idea is that is where there's no checks, there's no balances, there's no backgrounds, there's no real knowing whether they're. The whole idea is that pedophiles that want kids through a CPS way will be ultimately perfect in all fucking ways, outwardly. That's just it's there. It's not a difficult concept. And then I found all these pedophile fucking pedobanger Mormons that were grabbing kids overseas and shit. And that this is what it is that is where essentially this project is meant for at any moment for a judge, for a CPS, for adoption agency, whatever it be, to literally be seeing a name and then to be going to a centralized list. And at that, I mean, I don't have any, no, I'm not looking to get any adopted kid in my life. But see, that stuff doesn't really matter to me. The whole idea is that this concept needs to be instituted. And that the reality is that the hackers have already been doing this. Doesn't really matter the reasons. The whole idea is that in the end, it has a very useful purpose. And that then, that's the whole idea is that the more that it goes into a church controlled world, the more likely that they're not even going to think about the person at all being a pedophile. One of the things about church people is that they just tend to not even think about those kind of ideas ever. It's all they would see is oh, some nice person wants to save a child. And that's the kind of stuff that pedophiles are highly manipulative. They have an extreme ability of lying and manipulating in a convincing way. And that is where I even saw some teacher on here that literally fit pretty much what would be a stereotype or a boilerplate or a standard of a highly suspected pedophile. And see, here's the thing, if the child doesn't naturally respond in this way, then all of a sudden they weren't compatible. And that's where essentially that's the kind of stuff. And so the reality is that I know that there's too many children. That this is why I came up with the prep school path, to build state prep schools in a normal way instead of the Native American way. And that is where that is probably a solution that needs to be instituted also. It's like the reality is that you can't just justify just handing these kids off everywhere. The the rise in the ability to groom and to manipulate children very easily is extreme. And they have whole within a week, pretty much any pedophile could probably be trained at grooming any child. Within a week, they have whole executive training tutorial systems and shit on it, and it's like the people that you would be afraid are in those systems. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The whole idea is that if they're trying to get a child through CPS or rehoming or out of a group home or something, if they're a pedophile, they'll already be in a dark web for pedophiles. And in there, those pedophiles will be grooming themselves into being the perfect checklistable person. So, I mean, this is a real reality. This is a real reality. The whole idea is that here's something that most CPS wouldn't. This would be a disqualification or something, and that pedophiles know that. And that somebody that refuses to drink an alcoholic beverage for whatever reasons, the whole idea is that all pedophiles usually refrain from drinking alcohol. And so then that puts them right above me, and that I'm a person that deprograms groomed children, and I'm also like trained to be a child security officer, basically. And that the reality is that just having an alcoholic beverage places damn near every pedophile above me on a qualified list or something. I mean that's what it is. And so you see that somebody that is probably definitely, you know, I know what type of people get foster kids and adoptions and stuff. And it's like, I know that at the very least, I fall into somebody that would be an acceptable person for that in a common sense way. But see, the alcoholic beverage places every pedophile above me. And you see, that's the kind of shit that these pedophiles know. Is that they're all clean, they're all kosher, they're all perfect, they never say fuck, they never cuss, they never do anything. They never do anything bad, except for pedophilia. And that's what it requires in their little dark webs. It requires them to be like that just to be able to do pedophilia. Essentially, they have to sit on the dark web until they meet a certain moral ethics type kind of lifestyle, basically, and then they can go out to a child brothel, basically. And so that is like where all of them are basically already what would be people that, in an illusionary way, would fall into who the CPS would be handing kids off to. And see, this is the real problem. And so the whole idea is that I'm not busy advocating for drinking or anything, but the whole idea is that doesn't it seem strange that a highly educated person at deprogramming and anti-child grooming methods and somebody that's completely harmless to children is also responsible with children and shit. I mean, I'm a father. The whole idea is that, isn't it strange that probably a list, if you had a list, pedophiles would be above me just for drinking alcohol. And you see that that's where whatever they're doing in there is really like, is that's why I talk about these pedophiles. They learn this stuff, this counter-oping to worlds that prevent, in the past, a single guy would have never be given a child ever in the past. An old cat lady mom or something, or an old cat lady, an aunt or something that's 50 or 60. That's the kind of normal things that would have been done in the past, and that would still kind of be a go-to. A woman in her late 40s or 50s that's never been married and single and religious and stuff. That would be a normal course of action. Okay, but that some single guy in his 30s or early 40s, that's the kind of stuff that nowadays they don't really reject people for that reason. And you see a single guy, ne- probably never been married, doesn't have any kids. It's like, I'm divorced, I have kids. And it's like, the whole idea is that, you know, if there was a single guy idea, a divorcee, that because see, he's a single guy, never been married, always around kids, and that if he's not like being open about, see, the whole idea is that if he's a homosexual or something, then any of the closeted ones, those people suffer from psychological issues from that. And this is why you can go ask any of the gay psychology world that the closeted homosexual world has and suffers from massive psychological issues, a lot of them, pretty predominantly in that world. Okay, that's why they're always pushing for people to be open about that stuff. And so that's where a single gay dude, that would not necessarily mean anything to me, okay? But that they would have to be open about it, okay? And that then if they're going to churches or something to be getting kids, that's kind of weird. And so this is what I'm getting at. These kind of things need to be thought about in this way. And that the more what I was able to research is that these hackers had noticed that there was just like a massive resistance. And this is what I know. The pedophiles are so obsessed about getting pedophilia sex that they'll literally target CPS workers in these hookup sites and shit like that for blackmailing, just to make it to where they can force these people to be giving these people children. And then I noticed the Mormons doing it. I noticed like sleazy S&M clubbers doing it and shit. People that are sex freaks and shit, that are able to literally blatantly, in the dark web way, they'll be blatantly pedophiles, and that they'll be blatantly blackmailing CPS workers into blatantly giving them a kid, and that it'll be seen by thousands of people in an area. And that is where, this is the other thing, is like they have people that sit around all day being basically sociopaths on dark web. They go to churches, that are in Tea Party, that live conservative values lives, that will literally be sitting around online, blackmailing people, torturing hackers and speakers and shit into suicide, torturing women into sex for other guys and shit, and that then them they are basically the types of people that you would never want. They're sociopaths, and yet they would be in an outward way they would be, conservative Christian. You probably have some sort of decent income or something, and that then they'll never cuss openly and shit. They won't, and that's the kind of shit that those people would be considered like qualified type of people in this world. They don't normally drink. They don't do drugs. They don't smoke weed. They don't do any of that stuff. And that then they sit online being huge sociopaths. They're crazy. They have logic issues and shit. And that is where they are on this too. I mean that's pretty much it. And so that's where essentially what would be like pretty typical kind of people to foster to or whatever end up being people that in ways know how to gaslight women and shit. And those are all indicators of people that know how to groom children into pedophilia sex. They also are broadcasting themselves and stuff. They're also like, they basically live in like a secret closeted porn world where they're so paranoid about their meta that they're in a dark web just to whack off to porn. And it's like, in the end, that kind of idea. It's like, if you're just looking at like you just you get they have free porn that you can look at on the regular sites, and then if you're just looking at stuff that's just like normal sex, that puts these type of people at ease in ways because then they end up seeing a person that isn't so paranoid and is being normal because it's kind of just normal for normal people just to use the regular porn sites. But everybody's all secrety and psycho-y and closeted about all these things, and then why? Why? Why is everybody so closeted about looking at porn? The whole idea is that if somebody has like a membership, that usually means a sex addict, and that normal people look at porn also, and that nobody actually needs to get a membership to any of those porn sites. Basically, to to have access to porn and stuff. And so the whole idea is that it's normal in a normal psychology world for a person to whack off to porn once in a while. I mean, that's not anything. That's nothing. It's the people that are so, you know, you people are on dark webs. That's a whole nasty porn world. The whole idea is that the people that are on ClearNet, most people look at porn once in a while. But most people don't sign up for memberships. Most people aren't doing live cam whack off sites. Most people aren't doing adult friend finders and shit. Sex freaks do that stuff. So keep in mind, these are real aspects because you know what? If they're just going to go around disqualifying people for looking at the free porn on the regular porn sites, that's going to damn near disqualify everybody. And then normal people that are like that refrain from doing that in all ways, that doesn't necessarily mean anything either. But if they're on ClearNet and they're never looking at that stuff, that's normal also. But that if they're accessing dark web, essentially people that access dark web, that's a sex addict world. And that, yeah, sex addicts, when one type of porn or something doesn't work for them anymore, then they move on to a different type of porn. And then sex addicts are the same way with actual sex. Yeah, it goes from like, you know, cheating, hooking up real fast, orgies and stuff. Then it starts to get into like more weirder kind of sex and shit. And then eventually that stuff doesn't make their penis hard anymore, or it doesn't make them ejaculate as a woman. And then eventually it gets into weird forbidden stuff. And then that is what the progression of people that are sex addicts is. Most sex addicts. He's like, you want to find a bunch of pedophiles? Go to Sex Addicts Anonymous. And there'll be a bunch of pedophiles in there.